Thank you. Thank you so much for the readings and welcome everyone. Really nice to see so many of you with us today. I just wanted to start with a question to Kalaf. First, I need to say this book was really amazing to read for me because I happen to know some of the characters. I know Johnny, the character that appears, I think, in the first voice or the second, I can't remember now. And it was through Johnny that I met Kalaf like 30 years ago, I guess, in Lisbon. And it's very funny because many of the things you talk about Lisbon, I also was there, like the Cachupa restaurant, which I went so many times with my boyfriend at the time, who is my husband today. I just didn't know the names of the owners, but that was something I learned through your book. So this book was kind of familiar return to Lisbon and to the 90s, which is really, really pleasant to read. Um, and I guess this first episode, which the book starts with, uh, it's I was wondering when I was reading it, is it kind of the thing that happened that made you write this book? That was the question I had for you. What made you want to write this book? What is the history behind this story?
Yeah, yes, I remember you, Gabriela, back in the days in Lisbon. Um, so this book wasn't planned. It came, to be honest, and I have to give credit to him. It was because Agualusa, as I was in a literature festival in Brazil, in Rio, and I've been to Rio like before that event maybe 3 times, always with music, and that was one of the first time I was with literature, and also for the first time I encounter an audience because again performing music, especially a band coming from Europe, even though we played of course African music, African dance music, we were considered a Portuguese band. And of course, the places that we performed were not so affordable. So we encountered, let's say, a middle class, upper middle class audience. So I never really encountered the audience that I grew up knowing that Brazil is, the 53% of Africans, Afro-Brazilians there. So that was the first time having contact and talking to the audience, and um, and the conversation was about kuduro, was about music. And around that time, I believe it was a soap opera in Globo, and the soap opera had an opening theme, an opening song, and it was called something kuduro, dança kuduro, something like that. And of course, was the kuduro that existed via Miami, because kuduro is not only an Angolan music genre, and of course, a Lisbon present in Lisbon, but there is a scene that claim the name kuduro, but don't really pay homage. It's not even close to the real kuduro. So the audience was asking me, "Oh, what is this thing called kuduro?" Because we know this via Globo, via this TV soap opera, novella. Uh, so the rest of the talk end up me explaining like the beginning of kuduro, what it meant to Angolans, what it meant to Lisbon, and introducing some of the characters that make the genre what it was and what it is. Uh, and then at the end of the panel, even like next day on the way back to Lisbon, I was traveling with Agualusa, and he was just praising and very happy with the result of that talk. And he said, like, you should absolutely write the biography of Kuduro. Yeah. And of course, I was touring back then. I didn't have the time to go to Angola and interview Kuduro, the founders of Kuduro, because it's very hard to find a Kuduro artist. Like, yeah, you need probably a whole year in order to write that book. And I didn't have a year to devote myself to that task. So I decided to tell the story of Kuduro, because I'm also a big fan of musical biographies, especially the Brazilian ones like Rui Castro, even Caetano Veloso has a beautiful one about Tropicalia movement. Nelson Mottes also has one, a fantastic one. So I wanted to pay homage to that type of literature, at the same time tell the story of Kuduro. And by telling the story of Kuduro, you need to include Kizomba. So that was, again, a big project. Um, but since I didn't have the time, I decided to use my own biography, or at least parts of my own biography, to narrate, because I also was in love with that music genre, and that music genre changed my life. And I'm not even being funny to say that. Um, yeah, so again, as any writer, we try to pick up episodes that can somehow be interesting for the reader. And I had this episode, I had Dial Rest. I never really used anywhere because when I was living it, I knew that this thing would be a fantastic a chapter or short story or whatever the case in one of my writings. So I wrote this book in 2015, 16. That's when I started writing this book, and this episode happened in 2008. So it took me a while, and I kept that secret, and it was very useful when I was writing the book because it gave me a great start.